Yes, morning.
Hello. First aid station.
First aid.
We get it, Nia. Welcome. Inside. You don't need to stand if you go from there. See a chair up there if you want to grab it. 2 chairs over there. Welcome, welcome. What a wonderful day. Is everyone having a good day, I hope?
Yes.
My name is Utsa. Utsa. And if you are having a hard time remembering that, you can just call me you. I hope you can remember that. You. There you go. You have a question?
Was this like a religious place or something like that?
It looks really nice.
Ooh, I mean, depends on how you define religious.
Well, it looks religious.
Maybe spiritual. It's a very spiritual place, yes. In fact, you know, some of these little domes out here have very good acoustics, and you can go in there, like, you know, sing and do wonderful things.
This is really nice.
Yeah. My name is Utsa, or you. I'm a senior at Pomona College. I study mathematics, and I'm a baby on the farm. I grew a lot on the farm in the past 2 years, so I really like this space. And
I'm Adam. I graduated from Pomona last year, and this year I'm the farm manager.
Hello.
Lucas, I'm a junior at Pomona, and I've been working here for this semester, so I'm much newer to the farm than these guys, but it's an awesome place and I love it a lot, and I'm glad you guys are here.
yeah. So, do names? Okay, can we have a quick? I don't know. Does everyone know everyone's name?
And I remember Morning Glory was our. What's
Morning Glory.
Me? My name is Alex, and I like peaches.
I'm Marcia, and I will say strawberries today.
Okay, I'm Shore, and I identify myself with pomegranate because outside is different than inside.
I'm Natalie, and also go with strawberry. I'm Miranda, and I identify myself with the watermelon.
I'm Miss Ladette, Miranda's mom, and I identify with jasmine.
I'm Miguel, and I identify with apples.
Okay. Should we have you?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Adam?
I'm Adam. I generally identify with the carrot.
I'm Lucas. I identify with the gravenseed apple, which is an apple that's like where I'm from.
I'm Cedric, and I identify myself with grapes.
I'm Jasmine, and I identify myself with another apple.
I'm you, and I identify myself with mulberries.
You're a squirrel. You're a squirrel. I know it.
I'm Jacqueline, and I love oranges.
I'm Oseas, and I identify myself as a pineapple. I'm John, and I identify myself with
My name is Harold. I identify myself as a honeydew.
Okay.
I am Michael, also your name, and I identify myself as a pear.
I'm Abby, and I identify myself as watermelon.
I'm albino, and I identify myself as a cactus.
Yes.
David, and I identify myself as a watermelon.
I'm Nadire, and the nectarine is me.
I'm Valerie, and I identify myself with the pineapple too.
My name's Chantal, and I identify myself as a tomato.
What is it?
Tomato.
Tomato.
And I'm Kayla, and I identify myself with jackfruit.
I'm Nisa. Sorry I'm a little late to your tour, but I identify with a golden beet.
In fact, here's some. Nisha is also a DJ because she plays great music, and guess what her DJ name is?
Golden
DJ Golden Beats.
Because a beet is a root vegetable, but it's also like there are beats in music, so.
Yeah. Fun.
I can't resist but telling my favorite symbol in terms of plants and vegetables. So my name is Utsav, and I'm feeling very grounded today. And this entire season I felt very grounded, and my favorite vegetable is the beetroot. I absolutely love it.
What's really cool is I think we have all of these things growing except for jackfruit, unfortunately.
And a pineapple.
We have pineapple plants, but they're not actually making pineapples. So, yeah, in the
We have
greenhouse.
pineapple guava.
Yeah. Ooh.
We have pomegranate.
And we have pineapple
We
sage.
have pomegranate. What are pineapple sage?
So you guys are in luck. Hopefully we'll see all of them or most of them.
What is our group that we formed together? We are the Palomares Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Group. We meet when? Every Monday.
That's a long name.
Yeah. That's what we are.
And most of the students here are in 7th grade.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you want to tell me more about your program, your spiritual environment? It sounds fantastic.
Can anybody want to tell something about our metaphors that we learned last week?
What do you mean by metaphors?
You remember Natalie talked about metaphors? We had we did a game with metaphors, with plants. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, so who wants to say a little bit about the metaphors? What we learned, how we learned about it. Anyone is a daring and courageous person who can say, anyone? Miranda, go for it, Miranda!
Well, the metaphors are about, they have different meanings, so it could be like a fruit, and its metaphor would be its shape, its color, or like the juiciness of it, or the texture. And for a plant or a flower, it would be the same, but it could be as to how it describes someone else.
So kind of like how we're all identifying with different vegetables and fruits, you can use the metaphor to kind of draw connections between the plants and people. Yeah, is that cool? That's awesome.
So I'm like a beet.
So we had we memorized a prayer that they memorized, some of them have memorized for youth. And there are a lot of metaphors in that prayer, right? So what is one of the metaphors that one of you remembers? And just from the very beginning of it, it says what?
Oh Lord, make this youth radiant.
Make this youth radiant. So like what?
The sun or star.
Like the sun. So the sun is what?
Radiant.
And so we use it as a metaphor for ourselves. So make this youth radiant. And I heard the principal of the school said that when you guys walk out of the room, the classroom, she said all of them are radiant.
Ah.
Isn't that wonderful? She said before she did not see any radiance, but now she sees you guys smile and laugh and greet her, and she said they are radiant. Hey, the principal say that, I take it.
Wonderful. Well, let me tell you that a lot more happens at the farm than just plants growing. A farm like this and plants in themselves are a wonderful place to look and find metaphors. And so as you keep learning more about what a metaphor is and you keep, growing spiritually, remember that a farm or a garden like this is one of the best places you will find wonderful metaphors in life. And so with that, I think we should start the tour. Do we want to break into groups of two or?
Yeah, and I've got one last thing to follow from what Utsav was saying. There's actually a couple of college courses that have come down here to look at garden metaphors. The religious studies class came and looked at fractals in nature and talked about the nature of infinity,
and all of the patterns that you can find in the plants growing and how that can relate to our lives.
Very metaphorical, even at the collegiate level. And then the second thing I just wanted to ask you guys, especially those of you who've been here before, and maybe I missed this while I was out, but are there some specific things that you all want to learn about today? How can we how can, you know, all these great tour guides here tailor your visit to the farm to learn about things you're curious about?
I'm going to really let them say first, because what comes to their mind, if there was something that came to my mind and it was not there, I'll add to it. But, and then before we talking about it, in the meantime, we were thinking about what do we like to see in the garden, okay? So, jasmine. Thank you. I love it when you're paying attention. Because I know you love me and I know I love you, so.
We'll probably have to talk about a lot of different things that we see and then discuss whether or not they're a fruit or vegetable and talk about what that means.
I want to know if a potato is a fruit or a vegetable.
How does composting affect the growth of plants and fruits? Good question.
Garden? Oh, what was the word?
Organic.
Oh, what's the jasmine in here? About what does it mean to be organic?
How do you keep other animals from getting it?
We don't. Sometimes we don't.
Yeah, that's a good question though.
Yeah.
We can definitely talk about 2 or 3 different things that we do.
I have a question. If an animal eats some unorganic stuff and drops its droppings on your garden, is it going to be organic still?
Well, like whether it can be classified organic per se. But I think, you know, if it comes out of the animal's poop, I don't know. From what I've been told by farmers I've spoken to, they consider it more or less organic.
It is organic?
Yeah.
Let's back up to what the meaning of the word organic is. What have you all talked about what the word means?
That it's natural.
Okay. What else?
Something that you could eat.
That's what. Okay.
Something that helps your body function.
Okay. Anything else about what the word organic means?
Behind your head.
Oh, sorry.
No chemicals?
Okay, that's pretty good. All right. Yeah, one more thing, or? No? Okay. So I'll say a couple things. If you guys have other things to chip in, let me know. The word organic can be very confusing. It can mean a lot of different things. It seems, so a lot of you seem to think that organic implies that something is better for you, or that it's tastier, it's juicier, things like that. And I think that's very, very common. I think most people have that perception of the word, or at least a lot of people have that perception of the word organic. You also mentioned no chemicals and no pesticides. And that's, you know, if you think about organic food production, that is something that most people think about. And then the other thing that the word organic means is that basically it comes from a plant, or it comes from something natural. So there's organic chemistry classes, and they're looking at a certain set of molecules that are related to plants or living creatures. So there's a lot of things this word means. When we're talking about food, when most people say organic, they're referring to the United States Department of Agriculture National Organic Program standards, which are this huge list of rules that you have to follow in order to say your produce is certified organic. Now, the farm here, we are not certified organic. We don't follow that exact list of things that the United States government says you have to follow to call yourselves organic. But we use the word because it is sort of the closest thing to describe what we do, which uses very little, if any, chemicals, pesticides, herbicides. So we like to think that the produce we grow is better for you and is healthier, juicier, etc. But it's not necessarily true that an organic apple is healthier for you than an apple that was grown using non-organic methods. That's not necessarily true. It can be, but maybe not. So that's sort of what I have to say about it. It's very complex in some way.
Do you have a question? No? Okay. Well, since you all are learning about metaphors, and you are talking about organic meaning healthy, or no chemicals, or things that are good for your body, as you mentioned out there, I would also invite you to think about the word organic, or the Pomona College Organic Farm, as healthy. So when I say we grow things organically out here, a lot of people put in a lot of love, a lot of time, a lot of hard work to grow these things, to make sure that they grow well, they get enough sun, that we take out weeds and we put in, we prepare the soil well. So all those things I feel go into making this farm an organic farm, where people come together and work with love and do things that are good for our bodies, our minds, our souls. So I think all of that would come into the definition of organic, at least for me, as a metaphor for organic.
Yeah. I think that speaking of metaphors, thinking about what organic means, I think what being organic is also about keeping a level of spontaneity and not planning everything and letting natural processes do the work that they're meant to do, and they always have done, maintaining natural ecosystems. And so I think that something that the list of rules that the USDA publishes and says this is what you must do to have an organic farm, that very practice of publishing a list that has to be followed is, I think, a non-organic process metaphorically. It's like telling you how you must do something, whereas I think that organic, an important component of the idea of organic, is that you're deferring to natural processes, to the natural way that the earth runs itself and plants and animals work together. You're deferring to those processes and acknowledging that we don't know everything about how this works, and letting the earth do its own work to produce for you and for itself.
Plants are living beings. They're organic beings, and they're very smart, and they know how to adapt and evolve depending upon different things that happen. The weather here is so much different from the weather 2 hours north from here, but the plants are so smart. There can be similar types of plants in all these sorts of different environments, and they can adapt and evolve naturally and organically. And to me, I agree with Lucas, that's a big part of what organic means, is this ability to be a living being that's changing dependent upon what we feed it, what love we give to it, how we eat it, all of those things.
That's another important definition that I forgot about. Another thing that the word organic means. Even if we're not talking about plants, you could talk about how your program, how the Center for Global Integrated Education program developed.
Are you impressed?
Maybe that your program developed organically. There was never a set of guidelines that you established at the beginning that have guided the whole course of the program. Maybe you learned as you went, and that's how the program grew, that's how the program developed. And that's another meaning.
We very organically explore and discover how we can love each other and humanity. But so what I'm having a question is, how do you guys express love to your plants? That's what I want to know. What do? You go sing to them? What is it that you do? Because that's what we're trying to figure out. How do we love humanity?
Did you say sing with them?
Yeah, I mean,
it's funny you say that because we have actually sung together while tending to our plants. It has actually happened.
Yeah. I think that love, giving care to plants can come in different forms. It can be paying attention to them, and when you notice, oh my gosh, the tomato plant has a tomato today. Good job, tomato plant. I mean, it sounds a little silly, but it's true. It really, it not only makes us feel happy because we're wow, our tomato plants are making tomato fruits. That's crazy. But it's also there has been some kind of scientific research in some places that says that speaking to plants and actually interacting with them really does have a positive effect on them. And then also just feeding and watering the plants and making sure that the soil has the right nutrients and the right, beautiful properties. That's the way to love your plants. There's a lot of things that go into it.
I think also appreciation of the plant, both during when it's growing and also when it's producing, a tomato, when it's producing fruit. To stop at the plant and look at it and appreciate that it's growing. Maybe touch its leaves or its stalk and see how strong it is. then we taking like the fruit off the tree to really stop and not think about anything else while you're eating it, and to enjoy it for what it is, and to appreciate like the effort the plant has gone to produce that for you. I think it's an important element to loving the earth and loving the plants.
Traditionally, before we pick a plant or a fruit, we make an offering. So it's a give and take. We're in gratitude of what it's produced, and we're thankful. So we make an offering to them also, of whatever it is, or hair, or whatever it is that we have, to show our gratitude for Mother Earth, what she has provided.
One thing that I like to do, some people might say that I'm a little OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, but I really like to keep things beautiful. Like I like to go to the soil and make sure the soil's nice and level. I like to make sure all of the weeds are gone, even the littlest ones. I like to make the rock walls look neat and orderly. And for me personally, I think keeping that aesthetic beauty of the garden helps the plants to be happy and to grow.
And that's Adam's definition of beauty, which I think is a very good definition of beauty. But I think there are also lots of other definitions.
Is beauty ordered to be one of the characteristics of beauty? So my other question is, what is the definition of weed?
That's a good question.
Who knows?
What is a weed? Because we're talking about metaphors. We say, we are the flowers of thy garden, the roses of thy garden. So we never say we're the weeds of your garden. So what is the definition of weed?
Metaphorically?
A plant that soaks up all the water, I think.
That's coming close to it.
Very close. Anyone else?
It's a plant that kind of like attacks another plant and takes all the nutrients from the soil from it, so it won't leach it.
You're coming close?
Blocks so the water can from the plant you're trying to grow.
That's a very important point. The plant that you're trying to grow. Yeah. All of these are very good definitions. Anyone else have an idea of what a weed is?
And then I have a follow-up question. Follow-up question: could a broccoli plant ever be a weed? And if so, tell me why. Tell me when.
Broccoli plant?
Yeah, broccoli. Is broccoli a weed? Ever?
Very profound question.
Who says yes, a broccoli plant can be a weed? Who says no, a broccoli plant can never be a weed?
They love broccoli a lot. It's good wherever it is. So that's an interesting point. So the point you made was it's a plant that attacks the plants that you're trying to grow, right? And so many people can define or think of what a weed is very differently. So if you're thinking of it in terms of, a plant that is coming in the way of other plants that you want to grow. So suppose you have a patch where you want to grow tomatoes and basil, for example, right? And you have a broccoli plant coming in there very happily, just growing and taking up a lot of space, taking up a lot of nutrients from the soil. That plant is a weed in a lot of ways because it's competing with your tomatoes and your basil, and it may overpower them if it gets ahead in its growth. It might make your basil look very tiny and small, and not produce your tomatoes won't produce as many tomatoes. So in that sense, a broccoli can be a weed. Now, a few months ago, I went to a conference where a scientist, who was a very, very nice person, was doing a lot of bashing. She was very specific about what she defined as a weed. And actually, there are also a class of plants, particularly grasses, lots of different kinds of grasses, which are very good at what you call attacking other plants. In terms of like releasing chemicals. Certain grasses will release chemicals. Certain grasses will form very intricate root systems and overpower other plants. So there are certain very special plants that are really good at attacking other plants. And those are primarily what the scientific world will term as a weed in a lot of ways. So scientifically, a broccoli isn't necessarily a weed because it's not very good at competing with the other plants. Things like grasses and a lot of things that you see that take up a lot of space and spread out. are more of what the scientific world would call weed. But everything that you said about a weed is very much correct, and it really depends on what you want to grow.
So if we can kind of make a conclusion, because our group learns about the fact that human beings are like cells of the same body, one body, and how would this body be able to flourish and fulfill its purpose? All comes to what? What is that the cells in the body need to have together? Unity and harmony. So everyone supports the other, and that's the way we in human civilization can be the best, make the best. So what you're saying, a weed is a plant for some reason that it functions in conflict with the well-being of the garden. That's all defined.
That's a great definition. Wow.
Metaphorically.
That's a wonderful metaphorical definition.
So we take that metaphor, and wherever we are functioning in the world, we make sure that our thoughts, our views, our feelings are in harmony with the people around us, and will bring the best out of everyone. Then we will never be a weed. Right? Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's good because harmony does not mean the same as.
No.
Which is very important.
Harmony means if you're playing in the orchestra, you better look at the conductor.
Wonderful. So on that note, should we maybe break up into groups and start asking specific questions, and let's start the tour. This is the farm. For those of you who have been here will know there's this west side where there are lots of trees and lots of little herbs that are growing under the pockets of trees. Lots of fruits on these trees right now. And on the other side, there are also trees, but there are also longer rows of plants that you will usually find in an agricultural field. So we'll have two sections of the tour, and you'll see lots of fruits. You'll identify plants. You'll smell lots of herbs. You'll have a lot of interaction, and you can feel free to ask us. If you see anything that you want to touch or feel, you can ask us and touch it, and we'll tell you what it is. Or you can, we can talk about these plants. We'll see some wonderful things around here. Yeah.
I have a really quick question.
Mm-hmm.
How do animals work in this? What do they do to help the plants grow?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. So it depends on the size of animal you're talking about. Okay, so let's. Now the scientist that I mentioned 5 minutes ago was a soil scientist, and she liked to look at soil animals, little microorganisms, nematodes as they call it. And it's incredible because animals play an integral part. They do so much of the work. Plants won't be able to do what they do unless they're in harmony with these animals. In fact, within the soil, for example, there are 3 or 4 different stages of animals depending on their size. There are these bacteria and fungi. Then there are little nematodes that eat those bacteria and fungi. And there are arthropods and bigger nematodes that eat them. So they form a food chain, right? And a lot of these plants, a lot of these animals, what they actually do is take nutrients from the soil, right? So for example, we say that this particular plant needs nitrogen or a certain amount of good quality calcium for the soil, right? Now a plant unfortunately, plants aren't as evolved as we are in many ways, that we can, process the calcium. So, you usually cook your food and, eat it in a way that is delicious and you can digest it, right? Some foods are not good raw, some foods are good raw. A plant can't do that all by itself. And what soil scientists have found is that a lot of these animals in the soil, they'll eat up these foods and poop them out in a way or in a form where the plant can take it in and absorb it. So these animals inside the soil play a very important role in making nutrients available to the plants. And these plants eat that food and produce food that is available to us, because we can't pick up dirt from the soil and eat it, right? But plants take nutrients from the soil and convert it into wonderful vegetables. If you want to talk about bees, for example, bees are central to how plants produce foods, and other pollinators like wasps and all sorts of other things. Do you want to give examples of other pollinators?
A lot of other sorts of bugs that fly from different flowers and different fruits to other flowers and fruits, carry pollen in their noses, on their feet. Hummingbirds even. Birds can be pollinators. And different things, they're kind of just depositors and transporters of different types of pollen that then can actually make the fruits and like the actual fruits on trees and on bushes, everything come to life.
So do people know what pollen is and what pollinating means? Yes?
Pollen is like something that helps plants make their seeds.
Yeah. So it's pollen usually like very small granules is what is produced inside the flower, and there are different ways in which so usually some plants have a male flower and a female flower. Go ahead.
The wind is also a pollinator.
The wind is also a pollinator. Yeah. So I was actually just coming to that. So a lot of trees. So right now you'll see in a lot of trees we'll show you that there'll be flowers. And in fact, a lot of small plants there'll be lots of flowers coming in. Now how do those flowers actually become fruit? Inside the flowers, and depending on whether the flower is a male flower or a female flower or both, inside the flower there'll be pollen. And what sometimes these animals do, like what the insects do and what the bugs do, is they'll go and they'll land and they'll find lots of like sweet things. The flowers are usually actually very sweet, the nectar inside the flower. So the bees will like to poke their heads inside the flower. And I have some wonderful photographs I actually took last week of a bee like sticking its head inside a flower. And pollen is actually very smart. Pollen actually is very sticky. So it gets stuck to the bee's belly or the bee's feet or whatever, the bee's knees. And then the bee will go to the next flower and it'll actually deposit that pollen. Before we actually start, these are both mobile. Look at the space out here, right around you, right? There are no plants out here. We're not growing anything. This is supposed to be a farm. What's happening? Why do we have a? It's possible they're all gone now. It's not. Yeah, what's going on? Why do we have like a dome? Does anybody know why do we have? So and we have no way to stop them. This actually serves a big purpose.